Welcome. I am Daisy, your hostess. I recently shared with you the book titled Physics of Angels, Exploring the Realm Where Science and Spirit Meet by Doctors Rupert Sheldrake and Matthew Fox. And in the interest of curiosity, we are now on a side quest to learn more about the origin of angels. We just finished the quest on how the development of hierarchies of angels came to be, which was actually another side quest, and it can be found here in my playlist under the title of The Celestial Hierarchy by Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite. Some of you may find it quite interesting to learn that the concept was put together by an unknown author and that for the longest time the writings was apparently attributed to Dionysius the Areopagite, who was a first-century Athenian judge converted to Christianity by St. Paul, which is referenced in the book of Acts, chapter 17, verse 34. Now, Paul himself, according to theologians, was known then as Saul of Tarsus, had received a mandate, and you can find that info in the book of Acts, chapter 22, verse 5, where he was authorized by the Jewish high priest and the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Jewish Council in Jerusalem, to arrest Christians. Yeah, those were some interesting times, right? So they provided him with official letters of authority, specifically for the synagogues in Damascus to seize followers of the Way. So Saul, known as Paul, the apostle, did not meet Jesus during Jesus' earthly ministry, and it is said that it was on the road to Damascus, in hand with said mandate, tasked with the mission to arrest Christians, that he had a visionary encounter with Jesus, which caused his conversion from being a persecutor of Christians to an apostle, as written in the book of Acts, chapter 9, verse 3 through 9. In this vision, it was said that he experienced a blinding light and a voice declaring, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." And so here we are at another junction in this side quest stemming from the works found in The Celestial Hierarchy by Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite. And now we are looking for Isaiah, who the unknown author in his works quoted from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 2 through 3, as being the primary source for the first sightings of seraphims and his description of them, and hence their placement in the ranking of the celestial hierarchy as the highest in the order due to their immediate proximity to God, as per Isaiah's vision, which he then cries out, "Holy, holy, holy," symbolically interpreted for their unparalleled closeness to the divine. Now we pause for a minute to learn more about the etymology of the word seraphim and its first appearances in the human history. It is said that the word is first used in the book of Numbers, chapter 21, verse 6 and 8, in reference to the incident of the fiery serpents. The word seraph comes from the Hebrew verb burn. And for people that like timelines, the book of Numbers was composed before the book of Isaiah, and it is part of the Torah, which is the first 5 books attributed to Moses around the 1400s BC. The Pentateuch, I believe those first 5 books are called. And so the book of Isaiah, said to be written by the prophet himself around the 8th century BC, offers us a timeline. A context, according to scholars, gives us the first appearance of the word seraphim, which is the plural version of seraph found in the Bible book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 2 through 6, where he describes the beings he saw in his vision as the burning ones. It is through the writings of Isaiah we learn what they look like, that they are burning beings with 6 wings, which have faces and feet. He mentions them in the plural. We learn about them physically as one of them has at least one hand. We are told that the seraphim takes the coal from the altar in his hand to touch Isaiah's lips. Needless to say, these burning beings, through their proximity to God's holiness, symbolize the role in spiritual purification. Now, before I read from Isaiah's book, chapter 6, I will share some curiosities that I entertained as to learn more about the personality Isaiah and place him in context to a non-biblical timeline, which some of you may appreciate. As a quick side note, there is a non-biblical source mentioning Isaiah. It's the Dead Sea Scrolls, number 1QISA, known as the Great Isaiah Scroll, discovered in 1947 and dated to roughly 125 BC. It is said to be the oldest complete copy of the book of Isaiah, and it verifies the authenticity of the text, which contains the historical narratives of Isaiah's interaction with kings Ahaz and Hezekiah. Now, I must say, since so much of what we have been sold sometimes seems more myth than fact, and yet at the same time, looking at the times we are living in as a citizen of planet Earth and looking at current world events and how the leaders of our many nations seem to lack morality or lack the compass of love and compassion, I would say that sometimes truth is absurd and stranger than fiction, and perhaps what was once truth has been subordinated into the realm of fiction or myth to make it a bit more digestible for those that must continue on, or perhaps it's a way of keeping in plain sight things while using obscure language for a select few with eyes to see and ears to hear. Are you one of the select few? But I digress. Let's go back on our quest before the trail gets cold. If you wish to jump to the reading of Isaiah chapter 6, please visit the description of this video and use the jump link. Also, I've left you a stack of links to play with from which I used in research of this introduction. Now, back to Isaiah. Isaiah was a major 8th century BC Hebrew prophet who lived in Jerusalem during the reigns of 4 kings of Judah. Pardon if I don't quite get the pronunciation of these names. Either way, I'll have my go at it. Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. I mention this because that was a time in human history where there was a worship of many gods, and perhaps you, like me, have a curious disposition of how those gods came to be, why they were, and where did they go, if they left at all. According to rabbinic tradition, as per the Talmud, which is a compendium of Jewish law, ethics, and customs, mind you, compiled between roughly 200 CE and 500 CE, suggests Isaiah's father, Amos, was the brother of King Amaziah, who was Uzziah's father. I bring this up because King Uzziah is mentioned by Isaiah in this particular chapter of his book, which I am sharing with you. This relationship of King Amaziah would make Isaiah and Uzziah first cousins and give Isaiah access to the royal court. So that also would mean a little bit more of his, his social standing, right? And so it is through this relationship that Isaiah served as a royal advisor to the kings of Judah, whose ministry began in about 740 BC, the year Uzziah died, and lasted through and beyond the reign of Hezekiah. Isaiah was said to have married and had children. His ministry spanned over 40 years. He is renowned for his extensive prophecies regarding the coming Messiah and the kingdom of God. It was said that during the reign of Hezekiah, that Isaiah had his greatest religious and political influence, and he was Hezekiah's chief advisor. King Hezekiah suppressed idolatry and reconstituted the temple services, and with Isaiah's help, made reforms in church and state during his reign, which lasted 29 years. It is my observation that the Bible showcases much evidence of the warring nature of the Middle East, that it is almost mind-boggling that to this day that area is still making headline news, enough to make any sane person wonder the sanity of it all. Anyways, talk about war in ancient history. Judah was urged to join in an uprising against Assyria around 713 BC. It is said that Isaiah counseled Hezekiah against such a move, assuring the king that God would make it known when Assyria should fall. Isaiah, in his book chapter 19, verse 25, is documented in telling Hezekiah that Assyria's rise to power was the work of the Lord's hands, and that to go against Assyria would compound Judah's sin. Additionally, Isaiah writes in his book in chapter 37, verse 6 and verse 33 through 35 that Hezekiah did heed his advice and Judah was spared. As a point of observation, ancient texts write about the intense civil wars that took place between Judah and Israel during the reign of Uzziah's father, and continued midway through Uzziah's reign. Then there is records of King Tiglath-Pileser III showing that he was on the scene around the end of Uzziah's reign, and also found in the biblical writings of the second book of Kings, chapter 15. Now, to put into context these warring people of ancient times, Tiglath-Pileser III reigned from 745 to 727 BC and is documented outside the Bible through Assyrian archaeological discoveries, primarily as Pulu in Babylonian records. Key sources include his annals and reliefs found at his palace in Kalhu, stored now in the British Museum, which detail his military campaigns against Israel and Judah. He was a major Assyrian king mentioned in the Bible, found in the second book of Kings, chapter 15, verse 19, and chapter 16, verse 7. Now, their ideology appointed their king as representative of the gods on earth, and the gods wanted Assyria to expand and dominate the known world. So, this may shed a bit of light of the origin of the gods of that region. But more so, in my opinion, it reveals the nature of man and man's need to seek authority outside of himself to a non-entity, a non-physical being, to justify his actions. You may find this interesting. Tiglath-Pileser III worshipped Ashur, who was known as the god of war. And that was around the 3rd millennium BC. Ashur, which was nothing more than the divine embodiment of the city and its empire, said to be fundamentally different from any other Mesopotamian god. Which reminds me of how Greek gods usually originated from the embodiment of nature and essence such as eros or love. This embodiment of God in nature could well have its origin from Assyrians and then later adopted by the Greeks organically, since it is said that Zeus emerged as the head of the Greek pantheon around the early Iron Age, which was found in the writings of Homer and Hesiod around the 8th century BC. And by the way, I do have Hesiod's theogony here in my playlist. Make sure to check it out. It is easy to go down different rabbit holes with this material when it comes to man and his relationship with God. Anyway, the city Ashur itself was worshipped as the essence of the god, located in an area south of Kalhu on the Tigris River. The region was so important to Assyrian self-identity that it was also considered to be a god. And it seems that those that lived in that region wanted to have a godly claim outside of the Mesopotamian god Ninurta, who was well established as a key deity for over 400 years before Ashur appears in historical records. Keep in mind, to put things into a timeline context, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which you can find here in my playlist, was said to be written around 2100 BC. It mentions the god Ninurta, primarily in the flood story recounted on tablet number 11. Ninurta is listed among the great gods, including Anu, Enlil, and Ea, who agreed to bring the great deluge to exterminate mankind. Now, it could be that the region or the deity of Ashur was named after Pujur-Ashur I, who died circa 2008 BC. He was an Assyrian king in the 21st century BC and generally regarded as the founder of Assyria as an independent state around 2025 BC. This deity, over time, through regnal leaders such as Tiglath-Pileser III and others before him, frequently invoked Ashur as the supreme god of the empire, empowering the army and sanctioning the law. Eventually, to these people, Ashur became king of the gods, which kings of the territory through that authority, would also act as the god's high priest and conducting military campaigns in the god's name. That's a lot of power, wouldn't you agree? And also kind of that mindset of whose God is the God. All this I bring up because Tiglath-Pileser III appears to have been contemporary with Isaiah and his vision from God. And there are records of Tiglath-Pileser III which mentions King Uzziah, hence establishing the connection with Isaiah. These records are primarily through Assyrian royal inscriptions, confirming his campaigns in the Levant, his identity as Pul or Pulu, and his receipt of tribute from biblical kings Menahem and Ahaz. Most important, the non-biblical sources include his official annals, the Babylonian king list, and the Insirli trilingual inscription. If you have leisure time, you may be interested in researching and reading some of these annals as engraved upon slabs found in Kala. Here's a tidbit referenced in 1893 Leipzig by German Assyriologist Paul Rost and translated by Luckenbill, and it reads as follows. In the subsequent course of my campaign, I received the tribute of kings, Azrayu from Iadua. And next are a few lacunas or missing texts, and it contains the following. By means of an attack with foot soldiers, he heard about the approach of the massed armies of Ashur and was afraid. I tore down, destroyed, and burned down. There are more lacunas, but you get the gist. So, in the context of so many gods and kings declaring that his God was the king of the gods, we might be left with more questions than we started with. Now, keeping in mind for chronology purposes, the Epic of Gilgamesh in a timeline is lined up first as one of the earliest Sumerian poems which date back to around 2100 BC, with the Old Babylonian version appearing around 1800 BC. And Moses, who is traditionally associated with writing Genesis, lived and operated around 1400 to 1300 BC. This now makes the Epic of Gilgamesh centuries older than the biblical narrative, but all that is for scholars to debate. All we have are records, and here in Isaiah we have a man talking of his vision and God. Are we any closer to knowing the origin of angels? Or are they an otherworldly personal experience for a select few with eyes to see and ears to hear? There is so much to share on this side quest, such as the symbols of things mentioned in Isaiah and possibly the occult meaning of them, which would keep us in conversation for quite a bit. So in lieu, I look forward to your comments. Please do hit the like button and let me know you were here. I now turn the page. Isaiah chapter 6 from the New International Version. Isaiah's Commission. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it, he touched my mouth and said, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, send me." He said, "Go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding. Be ever seeing, but never perceiving. Make the heart of this people calloused, make their ears dull, and close their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed." Then I said, "For how long, Lord?" And he answered, "Until the cities lie ruined and without inhabitant, until the houses are left deserted and the fields ruined and ravaged, until the Lord has sent everyone far away and the land is utterly forsaken. And though a tenth remains in the land, it will again be laid waste. But as the terebinth and oak leave stumps when they are cut down, so the holy seed will be the stump in the land." End of the reading of Isaiah's Commission.